What's going on, workforce? Brian here.
Chris here.
And today we're diving into how can this happen server issues on launch. The latest example being Outriders this weekend had just the worst launch weekend possible. Sunday it calmed down, but for me the saving grace, as I shared with you in the before we started filming, was I was busy this weekend. It was Easter weekend, so there wasn't really any game time happening.
You may
Anyways,
not have been alone there. That could have been what made things better on Sundays. That plenty of people were spending Sunday with their family.
so we want to talk. We want to kind of dive into this topic. We're seeing lots of conversation on it around line. Give our perspectives as always. We'd love to know yours. If you're new here, you haven't hit that subscribe button, be sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like button, or you can always just tickle the dislike button if that's your fancy, if that's your thing. But Chris, how's things going on stream? I hear that we have a whole new merch launch that just dropped.
Have a whole new merch launch. I know mine. I ordered my shirts, and so they show up, I think, in about a week. So I'm excited to get my new shirts, and I ordered a water bottle as well because I've been trying to hydrate on stream. So I thought, it might be nice to hydrate with some work to game instead of just cups.
Just what is this glass? What is this? What is this garbage? Throw that away.
So Outriders had a bad launch.
Yeah.
We're a 14 channel. Railbon Extreme is a thing that people talk about. We've had bad launches. We've had good launches. At this point, let's remove the set of players that this was their first ever time to try to play a game on launch.
Yeah.
Let's talk about people who have played games on launch days a dozen times, 24 times, more times than they can count. This isn't surprising to me.
No.
Like when you said it had problems launch weekend. Okay.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean all games fail on launch, but it's enough of them that I guess, why is this newsworthy? Like, why are we talking about this? Why is this worth making a video about? Why are we surprised?
So I think essentially there's a couple of pieces to answer your question there. The first and foremost is that I think for anybody who's been on this rodeo, they aren't. In fact, anybody coming out and stating like, we should be nice to the devs, we should be nice to the people, the community leaders and things like that, like at a big part of it, like also why are we even tweeting that out? Anybody who's not and excuse the expression, a complete asshole, agrees. Like, okay, servers are having problems. That sucks. Like that's the human response. So every tweet about this and like how, like stop being mean to the devs and stuff like that, I think that's also all clout chasing in a way. It's like the reason why people are talking about this story is because the fact is that it's easy clickable things. You have a frustrated base that wants to play the game, and I think that's the real story. I think the real story behind Railbon Extreme, behind Outriders having a bad launch, I think the real story is that there's a game that people actively are excited about playing and they want to play, and unfortunately they can't. The adult in me says, yeah, okay, you know what, just gonna have to pivot. But the kid in me is no matter what always going to be disappointed by that fact. You can't get around it. And so essentially then the question is that instead of sitting here and being frustrated, like what can devs do? What is the technology that does not exist? Because like even Game Rant went out and put like where they sat down with all of these different kinds of devs and they said there was not enough servers, enough money, enough etc. in the world to solve this problem, because no matter what, when this stuff happens, you have millions of people launching to go and get this, and the systems haven't yet adjust. So outside of the fact that this is really a non-story, that a game that people are excited about that has an always online connection had a rough launch, what do we think that devs can start to kind of think about in terms of getting it fixed? Like, what is the technology that does not exist that would help make this easier? Like, is Ticketmaster the answer? Like, I don't buy a lot of tickets recently. Like, what would you think would be like an appropriate way to kind of adjust for these kind of big, massive games?
If there was one easy fix, they would have been doing it. This is an industry that we have multiple games that are used to dealing in revenue in the millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions, sometimes even billions of dollars. If there was an amount of money that fixes this, they would have spent it.
Yeah.
And maybe it wouldn't have been spent on an individual title, but a Square Enix, an EA, an Activision, these companies are big enough, they would have just made it a line item, and they would have made it proprietary, and they would have partnered with a cloud-based server, a scalable solution, an AWS, something like that. And it would just work. It would just function, and it would be great. And then eventually everybody else would go, well, if they're doing it, how are they doing it?
Right.
And they would have jumped on board. They would have found their own way, and we would have a couple of solutions that all seem to work. And largely, these games are handling loads that today would have crushed games a long time ago. These websites are handling loads, so largely we have seen improvements.
Hmm.
Um, so there is improvements. Where we notice it is nobody stops playing a game on launch day to go out and tweet, game running fine, having a blast. Like, nobody does that. And so you only hear from upset people. This is like working at the lost luggage counter in the airport. That person's not hearing about anybody that had a delightful flight experience. Their luggage showed up on time and they just left.
Yeah.
Like, that's not the group of people that's their base. They're getting nothing but people who have had a bad day.
Yeah.
And so the feedback here is, of course, heavily skewed to people who had a miserable launch experience. The question is, what percentage of users was that, and what could have been done, and is anybody else doing it better? Wildly better. I don't think it's a money issue. We would have somebody would have paid it. These games have huge budgets. They would have just paid it.
Yeah.
Ticketmaster, that's an interesting idea. Letting people in, that kind of soft open mentality. When restaurants do things to get their staff trained to work out any kinks, what they do is they open the restaurant before the grand opening. So the big sign when you drive by says all of this, and then they do soft openings. Sometimes those are closed. That's what things like betas are, where it's invite only. It's friends and family. When things are a disaster, no one knows. Sometimes it's just, hey, did you know servers were up?
Yeah.
And they're just up. And so the idea of open betas is an interesting idea. The idea of letting fans in at varying paces. Can you imagine if Endwalker, for example, allowed everybody who had played 50 or more of the 100 days prior to the expansion to go in a day early?
Yeah.
Does that get them past the quest giver? Does that get them past the bottleneck?
In some ways, it's anybody who pre-orders. So, like, there is already some of that we've seen already. And so your points are so valid. It's that, what is the right gate? Because essentially, like, that's what's been solved in architecture. That's what's been solved in buildings. Like, okay, if you got 100,000 people, what do? You either create more doors, or you create a whole queue system in which that you say, okay, now it's your turn to walk through this doors. So you don't end up having a million people trying to rush through a couple of sets of doors. And so, like, your point is exactly what I think I would love to see developers start to kind of focus in on. I kind of call it a lottery in a way, where it's just that it could be any circumstances of criteria. But once this group is in, are the servers stable? Is everything operational? Is everything running? Yes. Okay, cool. Group 2, batch 2, next lottery draw comes in, everybody comes in, starts playing, etc. What would ultimately be a short-term frustration is, obviously, if your lottery number is somewhere down the line. I could see content creators not very well liking that kind of system, because the current system ends up incentivizing them anyway, because they're already getting in early. They're already probably even playing the game to have their review out.
The whole day set aside to sit there and just slam their face into the wall until they get through.
Yeah.
They're paid to do it. That's where the drama is going to happen. So the more doors method, right? Square Enix did that. They did more doors. And how do they do more doors? We did a data center split. We added a data center. It broke players apart, but it created more doors. We had a smooth launch to Shadowbringers.
The smoothest out of all of them. Like, when you look at it, where
it's great, great.
Mm-hmm.
But how did we do it? We created more doors. Well, how did we do that? We made people live in more buildings, and so now you got moved off to another building, whether you wanted to be or not, for the sake of server stability. Their goal with World Visit and Data Center Visit, long term, 10 years out, is to have us all playing on mega servers. But they made a solution in the short term of, it's going to have to get worse before it gets better. And that sucks. The lottery system, we've seen that with various things. Okay, what happens when you see a content creator get in? Are they getting priority? Should they get priority? If they're not getting priority, does it still feel like priority? When we got FanFest tickets, people immediately said, well, you just got that because you're content creators. That's not what happened. We were just refreshing our browser and got lucky. It doesn't mean that it never happens. It doesn't mean that as we get bigger, that next time we won't have an email from Square going, we got yours set aside. And neither is right or wrong. That when we raffled to get it, or if we're given it, it's all just part of an imperfect system. They've got a series of bad decisions available. If there was one solution to fit all of this, we would be there. We would already do that. So people will say, I can't believe in insert current year here that this is still happening. I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon.
I don't think it's going to go away anytime soon either. And I think that's where the practical side of me comes out. Because essentially, what can I control in this situation? And in life, generally, I believe that I am only capable of controlling myself and how I react to moments like this. So it's that I think whatever needs to happen, I wish that it was like if everybody could have these shared experiences and just recognize that if a game has a online component to it and it's launching and it's a game that you're excited about, don't take that day off work. Don't be Cyberpunk 2077 and taking time off work for that launch, even though Cyberpunk didn't actually have an online component. But it's that we see this time and time again. It's a lesson that I feel is often bitter, like, just like it doesn't taste good. It's not fun to get a game that you paid for that doesn't work. But at the same time, it's something that it is part of the industry right now. And until the industry can solve it, not that you have to sit here and say, okay, it's fine, it's acceptable, this is the way that it will be forever. No. I think we that's a whole another topic for another day. But I think essentially, what can you control in this situation? You can control how you act. You can control how you react. You can have a backup game plan. And that's always kind of, I think, the important thing. Like I would say, like in the case of Outriders specifically, Monster Hunter Rise just dropped. If you have a Switch, you're looking for grinding out and killing some big old monsters. Yes, it's not with a gun, but it's still a widely accepted game that people are seeming to really enjoy. And I've even seen people say, I'm doing Monster Hunter Rise this week, and then once things settle down, I'm jumping into Outriders. And those are the people like that tend to come in with a real positive experience overall. The question that I have is, how big of an impact did Game Pass have on this situation, and would somebody be willing to come back and check out the game the following week, despite the fact that it's on Game Pass? Because it's on Game Pass, boom, I'm there. Oh, it doesn't work? What? This is no wonder it's on Game Pass. I'm out of here. This is garbage.
I wouldn't have done Game Pass week one. I didn't pay to be there. Mm-hmm. I didn't support the developer. I mean, the developer was probably paid by Game Pass. I wouldn't have done it on day one. It's possible Game Pass paid for that access, right? Because it looks good for Game Pass.
It does.
It looks great for Game Pass.
Yeah.
But as far as assuming there was not an incentive to make it day one versus a later day, pushing the Game Pass people back by 24 or 48 hours seems minimally to be logic. That still wouldn't have fixed the weekend because it launched earlier than that. Opening weekend's always going to be a problem, but letting them in Monday after opening weekend. But Game Pass may have said, I hear you. How much more do I have to pay for day one access? Mm-hmm. So it's possible Game Pass was told, hey, if you pay a normal access fee for your platform, an average per user fee, we'll give you access a year late, 6 months late, a month late, a week late, a day late. 3 hours late or 12 hours later, whatever PC was versus console.
Oh, that was a brutal delay.
That was brutal. There was a gap. And so it's possible there's an amount of money that overcomes that gap, and Game Pass paid it. It was in Game Pass's best interest to pay it. The question is, do the devs come out ahead?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not a perfect system, because even if we move to a lottery system and it's totally random, there's no press access, there's no favoritism, it's not based on previous play. Can I opt in as part of a group? Can I say, you know what? If you're going to have 10 groups, I want to be in the same group as Brian.
Right.
Brian getting in a group 1 and me getting in a group 3, it's not going to matter because he's going to wait on me.
Right.
So can we opt in together so that we're, that increases our odds. Maybe that says, okay, we'll put you both in group 2 instead of one of you in group 1 and one in group 3. Right. Can we create a system where your immediate friend group, your circle in the 14 term that we've thrown around recently, can start to opt in, your 3-man party, since it's a 3-man game. Can I opt in as a 3-man? But now we're putting additional load. Now you not only need to design a system, but you need to design a system within your system. There's not a perfect solution. The lottery system, everybody would agree to until they found out they weren't in group 1.
Yeah.
Everybody would be on board. And then they would immediately go, well, why do they get first class access and I'm back here in coach?
Oh, it's because of X. People Brian got first class access. Oh, of course he did. Worked a game Ginger Prime. Makes sense to me. It would anything
you'd only get content out of the content creators who got group 1 access.
Yeah.
So it would be confirmation bias. The guy in group 12 doesn't have anything to say.
Still waiting.
Still waiting. That's not a video. So the videos that take off are all the people who got access. The winner in this case. So it being random disconnect chance right now sucks. It's just a form of all of the bad systems that would get us there. Games that launch smoothly aren't newsworthy. We're talking about this right now because something went wrong. We're talking about this right now because it didn't work out. Mm-hmm. If it did work out, you didn't get to play over the weekend. I didn't get to play over the weekend because we were both spending time with family. So what do we say? I hear it was good. I wasn't there. That's not a video. So like it it only gets coverage when it goes wrong. It only gets coverage when it turns sideways and the entire Suez Canal is blocked. 12% of the world was flowing through the Suez Canal fine, right up until it wasn't.
Yeah.
So like, there's not a good solution here other than set your expectations accordingly. People who say, I'm taking off work for Housing Savage, I'm taking off work for day one launch of this game, have a plan B. I have my food ready, my house is clean, my computer's ready, I've got my energy drinks or coffee on hand, I'm going to be well rested, I'm going to go in when servers go live, and I ordered the box set of a TV show I've never seen for when they don't. Like, have a plan B, because when Endwalker gets here, when whatever the next cyberpunk, Outriders moment is, and day one is a complete mess, and you have a threshold of mess you're going to deal with. It kicked me out 12 times. 13th time, I'm out of here. When it crosses your threshold, what is your plan B? It needs to be a plan B, because what if it goes great? What if you have a blast and it just works?
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of disconnects on day one of Outriders, and I had a blast regardless.
Yeah.
Had it been about twice as many disconnects as it was, probably would have just played something else and said, you know what, I'll come back later.
I'll come back and check it out later. Now, Chad has a couple of things I want to point out before we wrap up this video. And thanks, guys. We're filming this one live, so be sure to hang out with us on twitch.tv/worktogame. We'll have some more updates coming soon, by the way, just FYI. Chad says, Ginger Privilege. I couldn't agree more. Ginger Privilege is a real thing, guys. Just get used to it. It's one of the only perks that we have for not having souls. And then essentially, some people in chat say Monster Hunter World maybe an intentionally rough launch. Do you think this, even like the no bad press is still good press kind of mentality, like having a rough launch continues to kind of draw a lot of attention on Outriders regardless? Because then once it's fixed, they can say, doors open, come on in.
I think it's why it's one of the side benefits of MMOs putting their shiniest content a few weeks after launch. It helps them keep people from feeling rushed through all the content they spent years making, because that helps pace things out. Take your time. The real content isn't launching for 2 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And it also gives them a set date that they're going to just cover it up.
Yeah.
It gives them a set date that, guys, we have exciting news. We told you there'd be 12 bosses in the next Monster Hunter on launch, and actually there's 13. Here it is. Boom. It's a free DLC available on launch 3 weeks after. Ta-da! And like, that's not what happened with Monster Hunter, but it could. And so I think that's the advantage, is the no bad press is bad press. That's not true. There are games that get slammed and people meme them into the ground. No Man's Sky is an example. I think Anthem struggled with just bad press after bad press after bad press. But for some reason, Destiny seems to be able to keep getting up. So like, every time you get hit with bad press, it seems to be a random damage modifier, and for some people it seems to not hurt them at all. Yeah. And for other developers, it seems to be one bad blow and down they go. It would be better to just have a good press thing sitting in the chamber. It would be better to have that kind of waiting. A free DLC 3 weeks after launch to just come in and say like, okay, we've got all of our day 1, day 2, day 3 patches out. Let's push this out now. I think that's why MMOs do that. Is I think it helps A, pace the content, and B, that first initial content patch always helps cover up. We don't talk about Raubon during the world's first race. Right.
It's a real good point. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today's video on this regards. Let us know what you think. Could this be handled better? How would you like to see these systems handled, adjusted, changed? Or are you in the group that essentially says, "Oh, it's online. I'll wait a week." Are you automatically just putting yourself into another game while you wait for them to work out the solutions? Let us know. Yeah, that's essentially this for Work to Game. My name is Brian.
My name's Chris.
Thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you have a good one, and hopefully we'll see you in our next one. But until then,
take care.